Many investors are not securing the property deals that they are dreaming of, and that is usually because of how they're thinking and not what they're actually going and doing. I'm Justin Wilkins, and I've been property investing for over 6 years now. I bought and sold over 20 properties in recent years, as well as I've sourced over 300 properties for other investors. During this time, I've witnessed some funny attitudes and seen people lose money because of how they approach property investing. So in this video, I simply want to share some of the lessons that can be learned so that you can avoid these yourself. So to start with, what I want to share is a recent real life example with you. In between buying buy-to-lets, I do a lot of flipping and property trading, and I do this to rebuild my capital, which I've talked about in other videos. In one of my recent property trades, I purchased a property for £245,000 from auction. I purchased this property below market value, then relisted it without a refurbishment. So I did nothing to it. And I relisted it up for sale with an estate agent for £300,000. Almost immediately, I had lots of interest, lots of viewings from property developers, investors, as they could really see the potential from this property. In fact, the end value was £500,000 if you did a refurbishment and an extension. In total, from that interest, I had 5 different offers come in from the 2 different estate agents that I was working with. But one person in particular was quite memorable to me. And this was because this was the first person to show real interest through one of the agents. And he was talking about offering £280,000 and about how he was a really experienced developer wanting his next project. But he wanted to know why I was selling the property. The agent explained that I'd bought the property recently before below market value, and I was just simply selling it on as an opportunity for a small profit. And with that, all of a sudden, his tone changed. He became angry and irate over the fact someone would dare buy a property and resell it for more money without even doing a refurb. He said I shouldn't be able to list the house for sale and that he wouldn't pay a penny over what I paid for it. This is such a dumb mindset. Firstly, this is like going to Tesco's when you're doing your weekly food shop and picking up a pint of milk and saying you're only willing to pay what Tesco bought it off the farmer for, which is stupid. In fact, what would happen if you said that? Well, you'd be laughed out of the shop and escorted off by a security guard, no doubt. You see, you paid Tesco as a middleman for the convenience of being able to go to a shop that supplies lots of different products. So the man was just focusing on the wrong thing. He was too focused on what I had paid rather than what profit he could still make from buying that property as low as £280,000. What also makes me laugh is that he was buying it to develop it and sell it. The only difference between what he intends to do and what I was doing was that he was doing a refurbishment. The outcome is still the same. We're buying, we're selling, we're making a profit. So overall, the lesson is don't cut your nose off to spite your face. This saying means don't react negatively towards something to harm someone else when it harms yourself even more. So in conclusion, if the deal works and you can make a profit, it doesn't matter what the person paid before you, a deal's a deal. The next thing I want to share with you is undercutting refurb costs, or in other words, squeezing trades to make a deal work. I see this time and time again. An investor will work out the end value of a property, then figure out what the owner wants for them to offer and realizes that the numbers are too tight. So instead of focusing on being able to negotiate better or focus on going and viewing more properties, because remember, volume negates luck, instead the investor will try to squeeze the refurb down. And they'll do that in order to try and secure the deal. So the problem is, who is going to make up that downfall? Well, it's the builder. The refurb budget that should be £30,000 is now £25,000 because you're squeezing it. And that's the builder's profit margin. So instead, you either A, don't complete the refurb as effectively as it could or should be done because you're cutting corners, or B, you end up jeopardizing the relationship with your builder because you're squeezing their profits on each deal. And if I ran the building company and came out and quoted you £30,000 for the refurb, and you turned around and said, yeah, I like it, Justin, but I just need the same works, but for £25,000, well, I'd laugh in your face. So why do we expect things differently just because we are property investors? Okay? I can tell you the best and most successful investors have great build teams, and they rotate them from project to project because everyone is winning. Property can be easy if you make it easy. Find out the end value, work out what the refurb will realistically cost, then factor in your profit margin, then make your offer based on those numbers. You are simply reverse engineering. And if the owner doesn't accept your offer, move on to the next deal and follow that property up in the future to see if it's still available and see if the owner has changed your expectations. My next point I call emotional versus logical thinking. Why does someone overpay for a property? Well, it's because they are either uneducated or it's because they are emotionally involved. I want to focus on the emotion part. This can come from multiple different factors. It could be because you like the area of the property, or you specifically like that street. Perhaps you like the pink front door, or perhaps it's just because you've only viewed 10 properties, it seemed like a lot of hard work, and therefore you convince yourself subliminally that finding good deals just isn't possible. So overpaying on this one by £10,000 is the easier move than going out and viewing another 40 houses without having success. Now, if you were purchasing a home for you and your family to live in for the next 5 or 10 years, then there is absolutely nothing wrong with being emotional. It's a good reason for overpaying. I personally buy a lot of very discounted properties. Yet if I found my dream home to live in, I would be more than happy to pay over the asking price. So there is a clear difference between investor mindset and a homeowner's mindset. And in other words, the investor mindset is kind of logical because it should be based on numbers and the market data, whereas a homeowner's mindset is emotional because they are buying what they want, what they've worked for. But the mistake that nearly every new investor makes is that they blur those two together. They don't look at the facts, the figures, the data. Instead, they try to picture themselves living in the property and allow their emotion to step in when making these decisions. Because of this, I've seen investors with big ambitions miss out on what I'd considered really, really good deals. So there's a lesson there. As an investor, do what makes money, not what feels comfortable or exciting, because those decisions are made from emotions. Those are emotions.